I'll use it. Europe has like these relative price points you were talking about, and then in Spain in particular there's a huge banking problem, and the symbiosis between the sovereign creates problems at the banks. And I was wondering what's your view on what is the state of like the Spanish banks and what will it take to finally put that behind and clean the problem?
Well, the Spanish banks, it's Cajas banks. Basically, it's the problem. And they have created a large problem out of the number of small problems by creating the Bankia. What you have to do now, I would say, is clearly clean up that, solve in the first place Bankia, and then also look carefully into the other banks, which they have done through the private sector, the BlackRock and the others, looking into the needs for bank recapitalization. I would say that it would be very good for Spain to ask for a program while doing that as soon as possible. Delaying that only creates unnecessary risks, I think, in this situation. And if you're behind the curve on that, it may get a bit out of the control. Now it's a difficult, of course, political issue, but I think also that in Spain, that in Europe right now, and that has been also clearly said, the program for Spain and for the banks in Spain might be very different than what you see as the programs that Troika did for Greece or Portugal. And at the moment, if I can tell, so there is already a draft of how it would look like, which has been presented to the Spanish government, exactly to alleviate some of the fears, internal political fears that might be associated with something like that. So the sooner they do it, I think, the better it is. I think Philip Hildebrand in Tokyo, he made a very good point, saying that the fact that the yields now are down for Italian and Spanish debt has to do a lot with people who have, as asset managers in their own companies, convince the others that it makes sense now to take that risk. If they get burned because Spanish inaction, it will be very difficult to see the repetition of this yield decline that we've seen recently. So the stakes are high, and there's no need to delay the decision.
I have a comment on the Dutch proposal. Because in Argentina, we have also something that is similar, that the federal government can eventually, if there is mismanagement in a province, can substitute the governor with a federal intervention. The fact is, and it has been used a couple of times. The fact is that after that, provinces have sued the federal government in the Supreme Court on the fact that the debt issued during the federal intervention for them was not provincial debt, it was federal debt. So I think that is a major issue because if you have some transfer of authority to say European.
And how did the court rule?
That was indeed it was federal.
Ah.
So it's a good precedent because especially if you enter in a moment in which yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because in addition you enter in a moment in which there is a huge deficit, so
right.
It is impossible not to issue that.
Right. Well, that's a good. So that if that becomes an idea that will be explored in Europe, then they have to make sure
yes.
that they have legal grounds for something like that not to happen. Okay.
Okay,
I
so
think I have, yeah.
yeah, he has to catch a flight.
Okay. One more question.
It's a more general and theoretical, philosophical question. There is a growing clan among many circles. For example, in Argentina, among supporters of government, and elsewhere in Latin America, between left-wing parties in Europe, or even between liberal economists in the United States, such as Krugman, Stiglitz, and so on, that this whole methodological and theoretical building that sustain macroeconomic convergence since 1970s, it has been wounded to death after 2008 financial crisis. The political consequence of that statement that in the case of Euro crisis, for instance, that the general exit claimed by ECB, for example, can be assessed. So it would be necessary to pick up another kind of economic policies. How do you see such statement? Or
So you're pointing to the difference between Keynesians and
something like that?
Well, I think that in that game, I'm not on the Keynesian side. But I think that the real problem is really a huge leverage that has been built in the years of excess, if you want. And simply the debt levels are so high. You look at the government debt or the private debt, that they do not allow any more debt to be taken on board. So you have to go through the painful process of deleveraging. If you have your debt to GDP ratio at 100%, you cannot, I mean, you already use that as a source of boosting the growth. By the way, in an unsustainable way, as we explained. So now you have to bring down these debt levels before you get the ability to borrow again. And that's something that I think that's the key point. Simply the debt levels are so high, and not only public sector but also private sector debt in many cases, not in all cases. In many cases, the private sector debt is such that the private sector also has to go through the deleveraging process, and we're seeing that happening in many countries. Now the assessments, whether it's good or bad, I think people sometimes mix up the things. So they say we are going through the deleveraging process, that's bad. Well, yes, that's bad for growth, but the deleveraging itself is a good process, and it has to happen. Now we can ask ourselves, okay, maybe we had too much growth in the past based on something which is unsustainable. This is the buildup of the leverage, and now you have to pay the price for that. And there's no easy way out. I mean, I don't think it's good to give people illusion that the way out of the problem is the way that you got into the problem. And this is by building a leverage and the debt. And this is not a very cheerful conclusion. But it's simple like that. It's like the mathematics of the debt that shows you that you have to go in Europe, but not only in Europe, the U.S. also to a large extent through this process of the leveraging of the sectors.
Thank you very much.